My name is Carlos Motta. I'm an artist based in New York City, originally from Colombia. I have been working primarily with video and installation, but also with live events, organizing symposia, conferences, and editing publications. I'm here presenting an exhibition that comprises work from the past 10 years. It's a quote-unquote a service show titled "For Democracy There Must Be Love." Work, I'm interested in speaking about certain issues that I consider important in society. In particular, I have been interested in the relationship between politics and art, and also the relationship between politics and the life of a citizen, the individual lives of people in society. I am interested in the ways in which art can serve as a platform or as an instrument to critique, convey, and raise certain specific issues that I think are important. In this exhibition, for example, one of the central themes is the question of sexuality and gender. How has sexuality and how has gender been marginalized from certain specific discourses around politics? How have we come to think about sexuality and gender as minor issues in relationship, for example, to the bigger political questions dealing with class and race, for example? So the works that are part of this exhibition, and also some that are not in the exhibition, are part of a larger body of work called the Democracy Cycle, where I have been approaching the question of democracy through different perspectives. The question of race, the question of ethnicity, the question of religion, the question of political representation, the question of historical memory, the question of sexuality and gender. All of these things to understand the way that they play out within this idea of democracy, which is oftentimes understood on a popular level as something that concerns only the political life of a country, when I think democracy is something that concerns us all in our lives, both public and private, both in the larger sphere of the political as it pertains to the street, but also in the very intimate sphere of affective life and experience as it concerns the construction of our own selves.
Ka akajuka neki akugaje achakwe muziga bace kasa agatse guzuka ahanguka no kazuka zunani uban agatsegaje kagubachi.
In the cathedral space of the museum, I'm presenting a work called Nefandus, which is composed of a trilogy of films and a series of sculptural installations or arrangements. Nefandus, in fact, is a Latin word that was used very much in the 15th, 16th century to speak about something that is so morally unspeakable or abominable that cannot be talked about. So it's, of course, a concept that departs from a kind of deep Catholic logic that deems certain things unnameable. Some of these things were specifically named, such as sodomy, zoophilia, what they call the solitary pleasure of masturbation. So they all have something to do with sexuality. And what I wanted to do was use that term as a point of entry to make a body of work about the way that sexuality is actually a construction, or the idea or the category of sexuality is a construction that finds very specific origins that date back in the context of the Americas to the conquest of the Americas. So I was interested in establishing a relationship between certain sexual homoerotic practices that are represented in the production of sculptures, pottery, and other things by different indigenous cultures, and the way that some of those objects were received, read, destroyed, and consequently censored, relegated, put aside by Europeans and European knowledge as they came to the Americas. The second work in the exhibition is a work called We Who Feel Differently, which is in this exhibition represented in the form of an installation, a kind of archive installation, which is where we are actually sitting in right now. The work is the result of a research on the history of the gay and lesbian movement since its beginnings in the late 60s. The work departs from an interest in challenging the primacy of the concept of equality as it has been deemed the ultimate goal for the sexual movements. I'm interested in thinking, as it is suggested by the title, in the question of difference and how the notion of difference was actually what made the sexual movements what they are. The question of asserting oneself as a different person within a sea of normative conventions, for instance. We Who Feel Differently is based on interviews with close to 50 gay, lesbian, trans, intersex, and queer academics, lawyers, artists, activists, radicals in different countries, in Colombia, Norway, South Korea, and the United States. And it is a project that wants to put in perspective the ways in which this last 40 years of sexual and gender activism have developed. Where are we now? What have we achieved? And how has that been achieved? How have the strategies changed? How is the struggle of the pioneers of the 1960s similar or different to the ways in which career activists are operating today?
Ser pobre é modo de viver, de pensar, de amar, de orar, de crer e esperar, de passar o tempo livre, de lutar pela própria vida. Ser pobre hoje significa igualmente, cada vez mais, empenhar-se na luta pela justiça e pela paz.
There is another work titled Deus Pobre, modern, which means poor God, modern sermons of communal lament, which is a work that deals with the history of liberation theology in Latin America, but it actually takes place in Portugal, where I worked with 6 Portuguese priests and commissioned them to intervene the sermons in the church on Sunday with some excerpts of texts by liberation theologians from Latin America, from Gustavo Gutierrez to Leonardo Boff to Camilo Torres. That work to me is also was very important to show within this exhibition because of its discussion around religiosity, Catholic faith, and social justice, which is of course something that is very much present in Nefandus, which is the main work in this show.
Las invito a cumplir una tarea digna de lo que ha hecho la mujer colombiana en otras horas, cuando el destino de la nación ha estado comprometido por serias amenazas e incertidumbres. Al aceptar la presentación de mi nombre como aspirante a la candidatura presidencial del liberalismo, saludo a todos los colombianos y colombianas.
The last work in that room is a piece titled 6 Acts, an experiment in narrative justice. And it is a piece that I did in 2010 in the context of the electoral presidential campaign elections in Colombia. And it is a piece that takes that specific year, 2010, as an excuse to reflect upon the killing, the kind of systematic killing of left-wing ideologies within the Colombian political landscape. So I worked with 6 actors to restage political speeches delivered by presidential candidates that from the left that were assassinated during their campaigns, dating back to 1903. So these actors are performing this text in public space, sort of like proselytizing in a sense, and there are a series of encounters with the audience that make up an interesting relationship between the question of narration and also this idea of a justice that has never arrived.